thoughts. And the general consensus is that there are two types of farmers basically. So first of all, there are no farmers that support liberalization in any way at this moment. And the two types of farmers we have, you have the first type. Those who would have seen the so-called leaked, the first draft that was leaked to the public, the first type of them who have seen that, they decide they don't trust the road that this is going down, so they don't want anything. No liberalization, no merger. And then you have the second type of farmers, those who would have seen the first draft, listened to the consultations, read the second draft, and they think that, yes, we can do with a merger, but only if the farmers' needs are addressed, and only if the issue of merger is coming from the farmers and not the government.
All right. And so, Mr. Antoine, Flavian Antoine,
yeah.
Your thoughts?
Yeah. My thoughts are similar. No merger, no liberalization. That is where I stand, and that is where many of the farmers I've spoken to in my area, that is where they stand. No merger, no liberalization, because they believe the merger is just a route to liberalization. So they're not going down that road.
All right. And Salim, let's hear from you.
Well, coming off of a series of meetings, the earliest of which was July 2nd at Grenville, in the cinema in Grenville, the farmers said yes to synergies and collaboration between the two organizations, yes to ownership and issuance of shares for what they and their foreparents have worked so hard for many, many years, but no to liberalization, and no to merger or to the merger under the current construct or the draft bill, or bills, shall I say.
So you're saying no under the present construct. You might say yes under what terms?
Well, it has to be farmer-led. You have to remember that the farmers are the ones who have built both GCNA and the GCA. And that includes many of our foreparents, including my foreparents. For generations, they have worked the lands. And many of my foreparents went to school, and it provided clothes on their back and food for them, and a proper education through that same farming. And so they built with sweat over the years those organizations. And if change has to come in any measure, it has to be through thorough consultation and approval of the farmers. They are the greatest stakeholders of those two organizations.
Well, Salim, the government will tell you that, okay, we've heard you for the last couple of weeks when we first came onto Beyond the Headlines. That's what I'm speaking in the government's voice. I'm pretending I'm hearing them, listening to you and answering you at the same time. They say, okay, well, we've done some consultations. I've heard some of the vehicles with loudspeakers going through the villages, inviting people to fora organized by the government. Salim?
Yes, so they would say that they have heard the farmers.
And they've consulted?
No, the consultation, well, clearly the legislation does not reflect that. So if they have consulted with farmers, all the farmers that I have spoken to and heard from, and every meeting said an absolute no to liberalization. So if the documentation and the draft bills does not reflect that, then they have not really heard.
Okay. So, Dr. Stephen Fletcher, you have been reviewing and researching this matter over the years, and up to recently you've been doing your homework. We heard you eloquently discussing this subject on GBN's To The Point program this morning. And let's break down merger versus liberalization, or some kind of mix of the two.
Okay, let me thank you very much again for having me here tonight, and to also indicate that while we discuss this very
Okay, so Dr. Fletcher, I don't know if you have a device, a monitoring device on, but we're getting a feedback. Seems as though we have a double audio from somewhere. Is that...
Yes, I was using the radio as well to provide background so let me just load the radio.
You have to take it off completely. You'll hear us through your laptop.
Sorry about that. That backup was used because this morning I had difficulty hearing directly from your audio.
All right.
So this was a backup mechanism. Nonetheless, we are here.
Okay.
And I was just saying that as we proceed to discuss this very important and this very weighty matter, my thoughts are with the victims of the recent accident that we heard of, which took place on the St. David side this evening. Very tragic, and my thoughts and prayers are with those persons and with some of the incidents that took place over the last few weeks. So I just wanted to indicate that.
Dr. Fletcher, I'm not sure if you're hearing me, but the producers are asking you to put back on your microphone. Somehow you must have disabled the video. Your camera is off, apparently. You're back with us.
Okay. Is it back on now?
Yes, and if we could just give us the full shot. Thanks, Mr. Producer. Right. Dr. Fletcher, go ahead, please.
Great. As I was saying, so basically I wanted to just express those thoughts out there because this matter is being debated and discussed at a time when the entire country is under, I would say, severe stress at this point when we are under the COVID umbrella still, and we now have to be modeling through this issue. So I just want to give recognition to that. In direct response to your question, let us separate the two things. As I indicated recently in one of my articles, merger and liberalization, two different things altogether. When you're talking about liberalization of a market, or a sector, you're talking about the removal of all restrictions, of all support, of all legislation that was in place to give protection and to manage an industry or a firm. So basically, you are throwing it out to the open. It's like saying, well, you know what? There will be no trade union laws. Employers are free to employ and treat people as they wish. There is no regulation in this marketplace. On the other hand, a merger is the coming together, and I should qualify, the voluntary coming together, that's what it should be, of two different organizations to form one organization. At times, mergers could also be hostile, as we say, but in that case, it will not be a merger. It will be a takeover of one firm by another. But fundamentally, a merger is meant to be a mutually agreeable phenomenon between two parties that pursue the same objectives and see the value to be had from coming together. So it's like a marriage. It's a voluntary thing. And here in Magdib, there is significant separation between the two concepts. So you do not necessarily have to have a merger, does not necessarily have to lead to liberalization. And liberalization does not necessarily have to lead to a merger. It's two separate things. So that, for example, in 1992-93, when the amalgamation was sought between the Grenada Banana Cooperative Society, the GCNA, and the Cocoa Association, what was discussed at that time was two things. One was it was voluntary coming from the farmers, it was farmer driven. And secondly, there was no language of liberalization. Liberalization was not part at all. So these are the fundamentally two different concepts as we proceed to discuss this matter that we should bear in mind.
Right. So do you think that there could be a hybrid, some coming together at some central point, meeting at a junction, like we say, or the crossroads, like we say in the villages?
Yes, I think there are possibilities. at some point in time for that merger. But let us bear in mind, as I think a couple of my previous colleagues have indicated, that there have been functional cooperation taking place between these two organizations for years. So there's already a basis of functional cooperation that has been taking place. And Mr. Flavian Antoine is a member of the cocoa board, right? And he will have much more details than I do on it. But there have been functional cooperation in many areas. There have been reduction in cost in many areas. But as I indicated before in one of my publications, there ought to be a roadmap to get there, whether yea or nay, right? The farmers must decide whether they want to be part of a merged organization or whether they want to remain separately and build their separate organizations, right? Because there are times, even in the private sector, where you find a large corporation actually separate themselves into individual units for greater value, for greater viability. So it does not necessarily mean in all cases that a merger is a desirable objective.
Okay.
Right? Or necessarily not even an objective, the means to an end.
All right. Let's go to Mr. Flavian Antoine. Mr. Antoine, vehemently you are saying no to this, and Mr. Fletcher alluded to your having had exposure to some of these discussions in the past. You represent the cocoa farmers, and you are saying vehemently no.
I represent farmers. Both cocoa and nutmeg.
Both cocoa and nutmeg.
I produce nutmeg, I produce cocoa.
So you have it from both sides, half and half, and we're making a whole. Good. So
yeah, 1/2. Go ahead.
Thanks for the laugh. Today has been a difficult day for all of Grenada. Thank you so much. Yes, Mr. Antoine, go ahead and tell us what your perspective is.
Well, to begin with, cocoa is a different product from nutmeg. The processing of cocoa requires different infrastructure from nutmegs. The processing of cocoa takes less time than nutmegs. Nutmegs have to be dried over a period of 8 to 10 weeks. Cocoa could be fermented, what we say sweated, and dried in a matter of 10 to 15 days. And as we have recently constructed a solar dryer in Mount Horn that could process 10,000 pounds of cocoa per week, that gives us a little advantage. We can't do it with nutmegs. So the infrastructure for processing the two products are very different, and you would need different people laboring in those areas. So from that point of view, there is no cost saving.
But Mr. Antoine, you might be able to you might have some resources that you could pool together, and probably depending on how you work it out, yes, you keep the cocoa operations separate where necessary, but there could be some kind of happy marriage. Week before we had Mr. Cato saying that the bride wasn't coming without a groom. So probably he sees where there's a happy marriage that could be had.
No, we have cooperate in significant areas. Our extension officers are the same. The same people do cocoa and nutmeg as part of the extension duties. So we cooperate there, we combine and pay the salaries of these people. When we import in products, we import them jointly, so we get savings from volume. And we pass that savings on to the farmers.
Okay.
Even in shipping, sometimes we ship together, we assist one another, because sometimes one area is overloaded, so we assist one another in those areas. So wherever possible, we cooperate for our benefit.
So you're saying
to say we don't cooperate.
So you're saying there's already some kind of merger, there's already cooperation and collaboration.
Functional cooperation.
There's functional cooperation. So tell me what is wrong with what the government is proposing.
Well, in the first instance, it's top down. Very wrong. It has to be bottom up. And some of us look at motivation. And I've been reading an article here from University of Illinois, the Wesleyan University of Illinois, which speaks about liberalization of the cocoa industry on the Ivory Coast. And although the industry was liberalized in 1999, by 2007, it says that the indigenous farmers were poorer because of liberalization. We are already poor. We don't want to be impoverished further.
But who says the experience there is going to be replicated in Grenada?
It has been replicated in Jamaica, in Ghana, and wherever it has been tried. It has failed. We were liberalized up to 1947 in nutmeg industry and up to 1964 in the cocoa industry. I remember tears coming from my grandmother's eye when she went to sell cocoa in a certain place, I'm not mentioning names. And the man said, well, I can't take more. Do we want that to happen to farmers again? If you could tell me yes, then I'll go with you.
And you care to tell us why he couldn't take more?
Because he was failed. His capacity to buy and to process was used up. So he couldn't take more.
What would take us
and
to that point?
He's not obligated. Unlike Cocoa Association and Nutmeg Association, they were formed to ensure that farmers are able to sell all their products.
Okay, gotcha.
And that is what they do. They buy all the products from farmers. When you liberalize, the man say, well, I fill up already because we went there about 3 o'clock. So you finish. So tears come down. And 1960, I'll never forget it. So I don't want to go back there. You have to drag me and quarter me to bring me back there.
Salim, you want to weigh in on the whole issue of liberalization. And as these discussions go ahead, we seem to be getting to the point where liberalization seems to be the major sticking point. Is that what you think is happening here?
It is the major sticking point. It is the major point of contention for sure, yes. Let me put it this way. If you were to look at an agent or an individual businessman who wants to buy and sell cocoa and trade on his own, any business, the core of any business is that they should buy or seek to buy as low as possible and seek to sell as high as the market would allow. That is the core nature of a business. Whereas the GCNA and the GCA cooperative business, their model is different because their model is to give that profit upfront to their farmers in terms of price. And so they are not so concerned with what the final financial statements will look like. If they make a significant profit after that, they still give back pay. So the interests are opposite, to be honest. So when you liberalize and you give, you have these independent traders, these traders, their interest is completely opposite from the interest of the association, which is for the benefit of the farming public. So you cannot marry the two. They're opposites. Their interests will not mesh because one wants to make as much profit as he can, whilst the association has been set up to protect from that very problem. And so that's why the associations have weathered so many storms and they've been so successful over the years. Yes, do they have challenges? Yes, synergies can happen. Yes, we can make improvements. Yes, boards have made mistakes and we need to learn from those mistakes. But in the case of GCNA, 73 years is, it's a success. You can't look at 73 years and call it a failure.
But Salim, the government's argument is, if I've heard them correctly, is it's time to move forward in a new way. So for instance, you were selling, they tell you that probably you in the Stone Ages with Wilma, and now we're in a revolutionized interconnectivity, internet era, and so you need to do things in a new way, and they think probably that some of us are, or some of you farmers are stuck in the past, and they're trying to bring you into a new modern era. What's your response to that?
Well, we definitely can improve in areas. Any business or any entity that says that they have it all right is foolish. We can definitely benefit and improve in certain areas and have cost savings. For example, one of the things that Mr. Antoine, I don't think he mentioned it, is that the associations share space. And, even the scale that is used for cocoa in town is the GCNA scale. So they already have synergies and they already collaborate. And we can have more of that. But these are associations that when you look at the Nutmeg Industry Act, it begins by saying that it is a body corporate. So it is a corporate body that owns these associations. So all of the assets and so on belongs to the associations. And the associations they can improve. And government has been a good partner and needs to continue to be a good partner. The people who set up the act, they saw the wisdom of having government representatives on the board. When you look at, for example, if you look at the wider picture, our plants, the Ministry of Agriculture does an excellent job and has been doing an excellent job at propagation. And even through, I attended the opening at Maribor, and even through the COVID period, you had people coming out to work to propagate plants so that farmers could benefit from these plants and to help the industry. And it's subsidized, heavily subsidized. So clearly, and this is because farming is national security, food security is national security. So the government has to be a part and parcel of it. But this GCNA and GCA are organizations that were built on the backs of farmers. And so we cannot lose sight of who built it. As a matter of fact, I was told that some of the lands of where these pools and so on are located were farmers' lands that they willingly gave to these associations. So, we have to have both parties continue. As a matter of fact, I look back in that same Nutmeg Act on the government website, actually, you can find the act. Someone referred me to it there. And you can see that there were about 8 amendments. So if amendments have to be made as they have been done in the past, sure, let's make the amendments, but make sure that the farming community is consulted early and upfront. I think why all of this started is because of that leak. And when they saw what was in that draft document, even though it's a draft document and it's subject to change, when they saw what was in there, it was, something that was, alarming to farmers. And so that created a sense of mistrust. So but I think that there's the two parties are definitely, you can't have it either way. It has to continue, and there's a lot of goodness in that Nutmeg Act.
Okay.
There's a lot of strength in there.
So
there's no need to replace it.
I want to go just now to Dr. Fletcher to pick up on a point, but let me ask Matthew to jump in here. Matthew, as one of the younger farmers in the industry, we have heard that the government thinks it needs to do this because these farmers are aging and dying out. And with all due respect to young people like you, what do you say to the government when you see young people like you wanting to take the industry forward?
Well, first of all, in terms of understanding this whole scenario that we're in now, we must first look way back to before 1947 to really get the full picture as to why we have an association and what the association does for farmers. So the general story is that during the 1940s, especially during the period of the Second World War, we usually export the majority of our nutmegs to Europe. So none of the European powers were buying nutmegs. And so a few small businessmen in Grenada bought the nutmegs from farmers for next to nothing, literally a few cents per pound, as I was told. Now, in 1946, after the war would have ended, those same private businessmen, they sold the nutmegs over and they made millions of dollars as their profit. So after seeing this, the farmers at the time, and the colonialists in charge realized that this is basically an injustice to farmers. So in order to help support farmers, the association was formed. And as Salim was saying, the association functions on the basis whereby they give you an advance on the price of nutmeg. So when you go to sell nutmeg, you get $3, right? If the association sells that for a higher price, after they cover their expenses, any profit that is made is paid back to the farmers as a bonus. Now, if you're a sensible business person and you really think about the business practice here, selling to the association and being a member of the association is the best thing that could happen to a farmer. Because if you sell to a private man, same thing as before when we were liberalized, whatever profit the private man makes is his money. So I don't think there is an issue coming forward to say that young persons don't want the association. Once you look at it from a sensible business point, the association is there to help its members, and it's the best thing that we can have. And just to stray away from your point a little bit, the nutmeg and cocoa industry, especially in rural Grenada, they are one of the main economic drivers for rural Grenada. Take, for example, during the peak of the nutmeg season, I was told that the GCNA would spend over $1 million per week in buying nutmegs. So imagine that's $1 million per week going out into rural Grenada. So that does a lot for the rural community. Now, it's a total mistake in saying that young persons don't want the association. There are different things that keep young persons from participating in that form of agriculture. And one of the biggest problems is a lack of good roads to access certain lands. That is a much easier problem to fix if we are to benefit the sector, as opposed to liberalizing everything. Like I said at the start of my presentation, I have not yet met a farmer who is interested in liberalization, because farmers know what the association does to them, does for them, and how it benefits them. So we definitely want to keep it. And ultimately, and I've said this before, in this whole liberalization/merger issue, most farmers are willing to accept a merger on our term. And the reason for that is basically, we see that as a roadmap. For the longest while, the burning issue with farmers and the association is that even though we would have paid for all the assets, and I'm told that the GCNA alone has over $67 million in assets, and I'm sure Mr. Antoine could give you a better figure for the Cocoa Association. Even though we would have paid for it, we don't own it in any way. So the whole issue of shares would have been on the table for farmers long ago. And we see the business of merger as an amendment to the existing law, as an avenue that would give us ownership over the association. But there are also things we don't want to see changed from the old law into the new one. And those things are farmers' direct control over the board of directors. As it is now, farmers elect 6 farmers among themselves. They elect 6 farmers to serve on the board of directors. The government appoints the other 3 members. As it is now, and this is one thing farmers are not willing to compromise on, the GCNA is the sole purchaser, as well as the GCA, and exporter of nutmegs and cocoa. We don't want to see that changing in any way whatsoever. So those are the things farmers are looking forward to.
All right, great. Eloquently put. Let's take a commercial break, and when we come back, I want to throw a couple questions at Mr. Antoine and Dr. Fletcher, the whole issue of trust and motivation. Mr. Antoine, you have a little bit of homework to do. I know you've done it already. You spoke about this whole issue of motivation. I want to know where you're going with that, and we come back and we go to some of those other subjects that we have not yet touched on. This is Beyond the Headlines on GBN Television. We're having a Farmers Forum, Nutmeg Cocoa merger. When we come back, we'll continue the deliberations. Stay with us.
on, boy?
Hey, good old things.
Hey, Daisy.
Yeah.
Boy, in line, boy. Your house looking a real good day.
Boy, it's thanks to the hard-working and professional staff at the Housing Authority of Grenada. They handled me real nice. They did my plan, they did the construction, and I didn't even have to worry about a thing. They were there with me every step of the way, supervising the job, asking me about my concerns, giving me feedback as the house took shape. They were there from start to finish, and even put the keys in the palm of my hand. I give them an A++ for customer service.
Oh, it's people from housing bad, boy.
Boy, not bad. Excellent. If you're thinking about constructing your home, why not consult the Housing Authority of Grenada? You could visit them right down in the Sandino complex, or give them a call, 440-1015 or 440-1016, or check out their website, hag473.com. They go handle you. They go jog your blocks, they go draw your plan, they go tote your materials. Hey man, where you going? The Housing Authority of Grenada is your choice for affordable housing and a stress-free construction experience.
It's what's inside that counts. Inside your house, that is. With Beacon, you can ensure everything inside your home with our Easy Buy contents packages. Just click, match, and buy for maximum peace of mind with minimum fuss. Log on to beacon.co.tt and choose your package today.
Are you looking for quality herbs and herbal supplements, or are you thinking about having a complete body cleanse to jumpstart your health? Then no need to look further. Visit Nirvana Natural Health Clinic, Detox Center, and Natural Health Store. We carry a wide range of herbal products for kidney and gallstone cleansing, male sexual enhancement formulas, asthma and sinusitis, gas and bloating, acid reflux, constipation, arthritis, imbalanced hormones, female health issues, liver cleansing, weight loss, and so much more. Also available, colonic irrigation, holistic health consultations, essential oils, and diffusers. Look out for our online natural health store coming soon. Call 231-6642 418-7115 or 449-7753 to find out about our delivery options or to book an appointment. Visit us at Belmont St. George's, close to the Foliage, Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Nirvana Natural Health Clinic. Detox your way to health.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. Just in case you're just joining us, we are speaking with three of our nutmeg and cocoa farmers and management consultant, Dr. Stephen Fletcher. I want to go to Mr. Flavian and Twine in a little bit, but Dr. Fletcher, we have Mr. Williams here. Matthew just highlighted the whole issue of board membership. It is something that you touched on this morning, and to the point. And why is that significant or important? We'll come back to Mr. Antoine shortly. Dr. Fletcher, you need to unmute your mic if you've muted it.
Sure. Great. I think that the whole issue of the board membership is really critical because the GCNA was formed out of a partnership between the farmers and the government of the day. And therefore, having representation at that level serves a very useful purpose. Because, as I indicated before, the importance of nutmeg and the nutmeg industry is not only for the farmer or the government, but for the entire society and country. And therefore, you need to have both parties on board to give direction, to give leadership. But also importantly, I think that the government representation is important in that it serves as an instrument by which good agricultural policies, and I underline, good agricultural policies are implemented. It's an implementation tool. However, that representation can be used for good as well as it can be used for not so good. So it is useful, I think, to have some kind of representation. However, I know that in the past, even when I served on the GCNA Board of Directors, there were some concerns about the role of, or the lack of a role of government, some of the government representatives, who seems not to have been very much in the driving seat of those organizations. And therefore, people are very concerned about that lack of enthusiasm on the part. But let me just put this in some historical context. I have here a letter that was written by Mr. T.E. Noble Smith in 1938, on the 9th of April, 1938. And it bears reference to the question posed. He said the following, and I just read a few lines in it. He said, and the topic is why legislative action should be taken to control the marketing of nutmegs. So he was calling way back in 1938 for government assistance in supporting nutmeg, and in fact, supporting the poor and vulnerable. Those were the persons prior to 1947 that were disadvantaged. What the 1947 Act did was, in fact, to establish a level playing field of economic and income justice, where whether you are a large farmer selling 200 pounds per week or a small man selling 20 pounds per week, you are paid the same price. The difference was in the volume of your production. So the 1947 Act created an umbrella, a protection for the small farmers, which Noble Smith said, on no more than one occasion in the past, an attempt have been made by the producers of nutmeg in this island to endeavor to stabilize the price of nutmegs by forming themselves into some kind of association. He went on to say very quickly, attempts have also been made by the exporting dealers in this commodity to organize themselves for the purpose of resisting the efforts of the brokers in New York in forcing prices down. That was in a liberalized market. So here was in 1938, the argument being made to form the association to, among other things, achieve the objective of increased prices and stabilization at an acceptable level. That argument made in 1930 is as valid today in 2020 as it was then. The need for protection, the need to continue to get the best price. Now, I know there are some what is called free-thinking economists and so that will argue against that and say, let market forces decide the price. Let supply and demand rule. But you know what? The cooperatives that was formed throughout the world, and certainly in the case of nutmeg and cocoa, let's say the associations, they served a very important role. And their role was basically to provide an umbrella and protection of the small farm. It was one of the rare occasions in our history where, in fact, there was a convergence taking place between the interests of the large farmer and the interests of the smaller farmer.
And I guess today, you're saying today that argument is still relevant, right?
Interest.
Right. So, Mr. Antoine, if we follow through on the points made, and we want to thank Dr. Fletcher for having unearthed that letter by Mr. Smith since 1938, and the argument is being made again today. Mr. Antoine, you had this note that you said motivation. What were you alluding to when you said it with a tone of voice, motivation? What's your concern about the motivation? Motivation by whom?
Well, the farmers are motivated to keep the association. And some people are motivated to break it up because it would serve their benefit. But let me give you two. Dr. Buckmeyer, quote Dr. Buckmeyer. He says that Grenada owes its quality of nutmeg and quality of cocoa to the work of the Nutmeg Association and the Cocoa Association. Last year, April last year, the Cocoa Association made a representation to the International Cocoa Organization in Ivory Coast, and Grenada retained its standing as a fine flavored producer of cocoa, 100% fine flavored cocoa. That was last year. Now, when an organization goes defunct, its functions, its claims, everything go defunct. And if you have a new organization, they have to go through a whole teething process to re-arrive at Grenada cocoa and Grenada nutmeg. That is what sells our product. Grenada cocoa, Grenada nutmeg, not Grenville cocoa and Guave cocoa and Sauternes cocoa. Because when you have that, the quality is not assured. With the Grenada Cocoa Association, we recently, in the last few years, we've been selling directly to end users, not middlemen, end users, and we'll be getting the best price. If you break up the association, no. The end users, they'll do last year, an end user from Europe came to us because they were buying from Jamaica. Jamaica liberalized, and they couldn't get quantity or quality assurance that they needed. So they came to us to supply them with the quality that they want. Do we want to lose that now? Will we get a better price if we break up? No way. So our motivation is to keep our our people, especially in the rural communities, give them a decent living standard. I grew up walking barefoot to school, but nutmeg bought gym boots, nutmeg bought khaki pants, and I went to school clean because of nutmeg and cocoa. And I don't want that because Ivory Coast, Jamaica, the people in these industries, they just abandon ship because they're not sure when they're getting paid, they're not sure how much they're getting, they say it doesn't make sense. We want the associations to be retained as they are and make improvements. I tell you, cocoa in 2008 started a chocolate factory in Victoria. And yet the government says bad management. But you start a chocolate factory in Victoria, bad management. You start a solar drying system in Mount Horn, bad management. You put a buying point in Carrier, and all that is bad management. I want to know what is good management as the government defines it. I'll stay there for the time being.
All right, and if we could get a wide shot from the producer here in the studio, we have on display some of the value-added products that, and I think you could see it right there, the value-added products through the Juvic chocolate, and probably you might want to say bad management, big question mark in front and behind of that. You have those things that you are pointing to as great management. Let me go to Salim. Salim, many people believe that farmers are somewhat responsible for what is happening, for many of the difficulties that they are encountering due to the lack of unity. Why can't all farmers come together to strengthen their cause, probably have their own union, their own corporation, etc.? Because some people are thinking if you were a more unified force, the government could not have done what it has done or has been trying to do.
No, the government, remember this was done without consultation, from our knowledge, from farmers. So the government can do and hire whatever consultants and whatever professionals they want to draft legislation. That's what governments do. But the interests of the farmers have always been there, and the farmers continue to work in that interest. I'll give you an example of how valuable in the rural community GCNA and GCA is. People actually take their checks and they go into a shop and they can exchange that check by the shopkeeper for goods, because the shopkeeper will trust that GCNA or GCA check. That is how valuable and responsible the two associations and the respect that they have in the rural communities that they will trade it. Another point I'll give you. I really started, I mean, as I said, my family is really from Samaritan on my mother's side, and the Bolas and the Alis and Wildman and so on. and they've been doing farming for generations in Grenada. But I only started after Ivan, seriously getting involved in farming and so on after Ivan. And there are times when I would, like for example, if you have avocados and it's the avocado season, when you're ready to sell your avocados, everybody has avocados. There's a glut on the market and the restaurants can't, there's only so much the restaurants and the supermarkets are willing to buy. So you have a lot of spoilage and you can't do anything with it. You have to drop your price or give it away and so on. But when it comes to your nutmeg and your cocoa, you know that no matter what time of the year you produce nutmeg and cocoa, as long as you pick it up and you harvest it and you bring it into the pool, you know that they will buy it. So you can still continue to pay your staff, and that is something that is stable. And people need to understand the value of that. When you take that away, then everything becomes like the avocado crop, where you're looking for a market and the price is this price at this time and another price at another time. And so it is very clear in my mind which is better for the farming community in Grenada. It is the associations. So if any improvement has to be made, it has to be made with the approval of the same people that built those very associations. And government is a key partner of that as well.
Let me ask Dr. Fletcher. Dr. Fletcher, can you follow up on the point about motivation? Some people, motivation and trust. You mentioned the issue of trust this morning. And is it that people distrust the government and that is why there is so much pushback to this? And there is this sinister undertone apparently that some people feel that there are some people who are close to the government and want to get these licenses and they're the ones pushing from the outside to really undermine the association, as has been touted by people close to the association. Your thoughts on that? Trust and motivation. Don't forget to unmute your mic. Go ahead. Dr. Fletcher, your microphone is still muted, right?
Yeah, sorry about that. So on the issue of trust and motivation, there's always, you got to look back to how we get to where we are, right, to understand this issue. The birth of the GCNA in 1947, and as alluded to in this letter by Mr. Noble Smith since 1938, you have always had contesting forces regarding that industry. Those who support it and those who are against. So even as we move towards the formation of the association in 1947, the concurrence of the legislature at the time, there were those who opposed it. It was formed in 1947, but by 1951, the existence of the association was challenged by those who opposed it. It was challenged. The challenge was overcome, and in fact, the Jackson report, Mr. Jackson was the head of the Commission of Inquiry into the operations of the GCNA. He concluded then that the GCNA was valuable and too much an important institution for the country of Grenada, for its economy, and so on, to really do anything to prevent it from operating. So way back in 1951, we were reassured of that importance. It continued down the lines. In the 1970s, we had issues with Sir Eric Matthew Geary. Government attempt to intervene into the association. In fact, it didn't attempt. It intervened, removed the elected members of the board of directors of the GCNA and replaced it with government representatives. It continued into the PRG. The PRG maintained the government representation, total representation on the board. And it continued later on when there were various attempts by government to wrest control of the association. That, of course, led to mistrust, because it led to farmers saying, you know what, I am not sure what's going to happen with that association tomorrow, so therefore give me all of my money that I am entitled to. Give me an advance payment, give me bonuses, and so on. This current debacle that we have found ourselves in is further adding to the mistrust that farmers are having with government and government control or attempt to control the industry, a government intervention in ways that leave the farmers behind. It's not farmers driven. So there is great mistrust existing within the community because of this attempt by government over time to wrestle control of the association. But let's be very clear on one thing. The association is, in fact, the trade union of the farmers. The GCNA, the Cocoa Association, represents the voice and the negotiating arm of the farmers in this country. Without the GCNA and without the cocoa, I am willing to bet that the conditions of the farmers, by and large, the majority of farmers, would be worse off. There are the few that would be better. Those that made the money during 1947 or prior to 1947, and those who are positioned by virtue of their wealth, by virtue of their connections, by virtue of other things that will wrest control of the industry. So that has created mistrust. The issue of motivation is critical. And I want us to listen to this because it goes to the heart of Grenada. It goes to the soul of what GCNA means to farmers, what it means to the rural community.
All right, so Doc, can I ask to just let's hit the pause button because we must take a commercial break at this time. We have some commercial obligations that we can't miss at 9:30, so I'm sorry to interrupt, but let's take a break and we'll come back and pick up on that point. This is Beyond the Headlines. We're looking at the Nutmeg Cocoa merger, tonight's Farmers Forum. Do stay with us.
Everyone wants money, don't you? The National Lotteries Authority's Lotto jackpot is $190,000. Play today for chances at improving your life. Lotto. Play and win a lot of money.
Good evening once again, viewers and listeners. It's time for the National Lottery Authority's Lotto draw number 3091 for this evening, Monday, the 20th of July, 2020. The estimated jackpot, $190,000. Well, joining me once again is Ms. Priscilla Barry. She's representing PKF Accountants and Business Advisors. Well, let's find out what the free ticket letter will be for this evening. Good luck. And this evening's free ticket letter is... The free ticket letter for this evening is the letter H. That's H as in house. H as in house. And it's time to reveal tonight's 5 winning numbers for $190,000. Good luck. All righty, check your tickets. First number up is 20. Second number up, 25. Third number is 1. Fourth number, 27. And the fifth, yes, fifth and final, it's 19. So it's time to recap the free ticket letter. That letter was H. That's H as in house. H as in house. And the 5 winning numbers, reminding you the jackpot is $190,000. Let's recap. First number up was 20. That's 2020. The second number, 25. 2525. Third number, 10111. Fourth number, 27. That's 2727. And the fifth and final was 19. 1919. If you have these numbers, congratulations to you. It has been Lotto. Play and win a lot. Well, guess what? We're here tomorrow, God's will, so do get your tickets and continue to support sports, culture, and nation building. Make all your dreams come true. Have a good night.
Tick, tock, toe. I win.
Feel like a big kid again when you play NLA's new scratch game, Tic-Tac-Toe. It's instant cash on the go. Reveal 3 X's or 3 O's in the same row, column, or diagonally, and win the prizes shown, or as much as $5,000. Win easy with Scratch. Must be 18 or older to play. Tic-Tac-Toe, please.
Give me a tic-tac-toe, please.
Tic-Tac-Toe, please. Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
Are you looking for quality herbs and herbal supplements, or are you thinking about having a complete body cleanse to jumpstart your health? Then no need to look further. Visit Nirvana Natural Health Clinic, Detox Center, and Natural Health Store. We carry a wide range of herbal products for kidney and gallstone cleansing, male sexual enhancement formulas, asthma and sinusitis, gas and bloating, acid reflux, constipation, arthritis, imbalanced hormones, female health issues, liver cleansing, weight loss, and so much more. Also available, colonic irrigation, holistic health consultations, essential oils, and diffusers. Look out for our online natural health store coming soon. Call 231-6642 418-7115 or 449-7753 to find out about our delivery options or to book an appointment. Visit us at Belmont St. George's, close to the Fallage, Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Nirvana Natural Health Clinic. Detox your way to health.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. We're having a farmers forum this evening, and we also have a management consultant, Dr. Stephen Fletcher, with us. And we are opening the phone lines, and also we are taking your comments, questions via the social media platforms. Already we have a few contributions coming in via social media. One person is saying a merger will definitely be beneficial. A number of savings could be experienced as services would be provided by a single unit. However, the new organization should be controlled by the farmers. Government should have an input but not control. Matthew, you were talking about the way the association functions, and we have looked at the whole issue of the composition of the board. Matthew, can I ask you your thoughts on when the document was leaked and you saw in there that the proposal was for the government to appoint all 9 members of the board? What went through your head?
Well, you know, earlier you asked the whole question of trust to Dr. Fletcher. And I think just as myself, all farmers would have felt a definite shock. Because imagine we're here under a state of emergency, we're in lockdown, and then next thing you hear, government is proposing merger/liberalization, and then we get to see that document. Where, as you see, the government was basically treating the association as one of many vendors in the market, and the government was going to appoint its own board to grant licenses to everyone, including the GCNA. So we were definitely shocked, and while presently we believe that if the merger, and only if the merger takes the part of the farmers' directive, then it is going to save us money. The government proposal, the last time I was informed that in terms of the general structure that they are proposing. So right now, the 2 associations, they presently have something, and Mr. Antoine could correct me if I'm wrong, but they have something like the board of directors, 9-person, the general manager, right, an accountant. I know the GCNA also has a properties manager, and then they have the other auxiliary staff. Now, the government's proposal is board of directors. That is for the merged entity. After the board of directors, there is an executive secretary, followed by a CEO, then a CFO, then a COO, as well as a CTO, right? All those are different executives and managers. So, they have to get manager's salary. That's a lot more compared to the one general manager that we have right now. And beneath all those chief executive and chief technical officers and whatnot, you still have the regular staffing that would be needed to run the association. So in terms of the government's proposal, we don't really see it as a definite cost savings based on what they would have done us so far. But like I said, if the whole merger business takes the direction from farmers, because farmers, let's face it, farmers are the ones that would have been in this business, and they are the ones that know how it runs, how it functions, and what they want to see out of it in terms of it getting better.
All right. So we have a call on the line, but let me quickly just say, one person is saying, this is my perspective on the merger debate. It is my belief that the farmers would give in to liberalization of the two sectors if it is done in a well thought out manner. What I mean by that is consideration should be given by the powers that be to take a holistic approach in this proposed liberalization process of the sectors. Right now in Grenada, we have an abundance of fruit and vegetable in great supply, and to a great extent, these prime crops are allowed to fall to the ground and go to waste. I therefore humbly make a recommendation that consideration be given to incorporating the utilization of these crops that go to waste along with our cocoa and nutmeg, and have an industry that can process these valuable crops. And we have a call on the line. Caller, good evening. Just a reminder to keep it brief. Thanks.
Good evening to Mr. Matthew. You raised some very good points, which I want to congratulate you for that. Young farmer, and you make some very good points, because I am a young farmer as well too. And the point to make there, I must have called, and Doc, what you the man behind the wheel. Doc, congratulate you and Mr. Salim, the first guy there. Congratulations to each and every one of you all. It's a very good program, and you enhance me very much. That well, frankly speaking, when I saw the advantages of the farmers, I didn't want to be a farmer, but from your points, Mr. Matthew, I could go back again and dig the soil and walk in style. Because you is somebody they should have educating the young folks. Because we thought before that doing farming wouldn't prosper us nothing. But as you come there, you enhance me from St. David's, and I'm only children to program, but this program should be aired more, which could be educated to every person in this community.
Thank you very much, caller, for that. And I have to say to you as well, Mr. Williams, that one of our viewers on the Facebook feed has said how intrigued they are. Nicole James is saying, such profound contributions, young man, Mr. Williams. You have broken the stigma of the youth and farming. Impressive. Thank you. So hats are being tipped in your direction, and all of our panelists are adding value to this discussion, and we want to thank them sincerely for that. Salim, listening for the last few weeks to this whole debate and listening to Mr. Williams just now saying, we've been on lockdown, COVID has displaced us, and then you wake up and you hear there's this legislation, and then you see the government going to appoint all of the boards. Is there some kind of thief in the night kind of approach you think that was being crept upon farmers who slept unawares?
The government could have definitely done it better. They ought to have known better and, be upfront and, speak. It definitely creates a sense of mistrust. What if? But, I'm speaking for myself. I believe that nothing happens by chance. Everything is by the will of God Almighty. So he allowed it to be leaked and allowed it to come to the fore so that people could know what was in it, and so that we could come to this point, and so that we can give, say what it is that, how important these associations are to us and to farmers. And also, if this helps us to spur conversation, to make improvements in the associations, then that's a good thing in the long run. So we don't want to be anything to be forced, legislation to be forced, and for the work of the farmers to go to vain. Look at the honor that government gave to farmers during the lockdown. Farmers were able to move around and attend to their farms, and then it became so important. Everybody realized how important farming was, because the nation was locked down and everybody had to eat. And so they were allowing farmers to go to their farms and so on. That same level of importance exists all the time, and we just take it for granted, because the farmer is not a loudmouth, or you don't see him all the time because he's always going in the land and he's always doing his thing. But, as I said before, government has been a partner, and it should be seen in that way, but it must be with the approval and in the direction that the farmers have agreed with, or will agree with.
Thanks,
it must be in that direction for it to be there.
We have somebody here who is watching from New York and saying, you remember back pay, and they put 5 question marks, as if with the excitement, back pay in December. Dr. Fletcher, I think you alluded to that this morning, but let's take the caller, and then if we could chime in on that. Caller, good evening.
Good evening. Yes. The shares, does it mean the farmer will be buying his own assets? As the first question. Second one, farmers around the world are heavily subsidized by governments. The reason for this, it will help with food security. Why our farmers are not subsidized? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Anybody wants to take that? Mr. Antoine, probably?
First question is what again?
The farmers are heavily subsidized, and something to do with the assets.
Yeah. Now the assets, we were talking about, two of us were talking about that. And the farmers, based on what we think, should get free at least 25% of the shares. So we have to value the association's assets, then make 25% of these assets available to farmers who have been there for a period, because my grandparents and great-grandparents were farmers. So if I get anything from the association, they contributed. So it's just fair that I get something from their soil, their labor. So we think that 25% of the assets should go directly, freely to the farmers, based on the years of supplying nutmeg or cocoa to the associations. The second thing is, the associations must maintain controlling interest of these monies. So the association should have 51%, and the other 24% should be sold to farmers. Give them a time frame to buy out the other 24%. That will do two things. It will allow other Grenadian farmers to have a stake in the association, and two, it would give the association some money that they could invest into doing other stuff with the project, with the products. Now, let me say two things. When the association ships products abroad, the foreign exchange comes directly to Grenada. If a private man, a private foreign entity is buying nutmegs and cocoa, they don't bring back all the money here. Some of it stays abroad. So Grenada benefits to the maximum from the foreign exchange that they get from cocoa and nutmeg. And that assists with government revenue and government ability to do its business. If you take that out, government will suffer just as much.
Okay.
So it's necessary.
All right. We have
if I may just intervene here.
Go ahead.
Ms. Campbell?
Go ahead,
yeah.
Sure.
I think we sort of got left off earlier on when we spoke of the issue of motivation and trust. We dealt with the trust aspect and we sort of slipped away on the motivation side. But that is important because it is linked to the performance of the company, of the associations rather, as well as the share issue. Because we are discussing this now today because of the performance of the association, where there is a feeling that the associations should be doing better and contributing more. Now, a critical part of understanding the way GCNA and FOCO Association operate is this issue of motivation. How do they motivate the farmers to engage in farming even when things are difficult? They use the price mechanism because motivation is basically about getting people to act in a way that you want them to act, that is going to give them some sort of reward. And the way that GCNA has been able to do that over the past is ensuring that the farmers receive a fair price in advance payments as possible, followed by a bonus or back pay at the end of the year. Many a time, the associations pay the farmers a price higher than what they're receiving on the export market. That is a fact. And the reason why they engage on that, one of the reasons, is to keep the farmers in the field for the benefit of everyone. Certainly the point was made by Mr. Antoine about the revenue that is generated that come directly back to Grenada, right, as a result. So it's important to understand that the farmers are motivated by the price that is paid and the bonus payment. Now, that leads to performance issues because unlike a private sector organization, that is, will probably allow the price paid to the farmers reflect the income that they receive from the export price, bring it down as narrow as possible so that the profit, as pointed out by colleague Salim in his opening comments. The GCNA, in a way, consumes that immediate loss because they need to keep the farmers engaged. They need to keep the farmers motivated. Now, some people will say, well, this model is not a sustainable model because at the end of the day, you run into deficits and you are evaluated on the basis of financial returns. I want to suggest that the GCNA ought not to be assessed purely on the basis of financial return, and that there are other social objectives that was set up or that was built into the establishment of the GCNA, which should be borne in mind. And critically, is to keep the farmers engaged, keep the farmers producing so that Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique could benefit from the general income that is generated. On the issues of shares, I want to touch on the share issue a bit because this goes to the heart of the transformation of the GCNA and the FOCO Association.
Can I interrupt here?
Sure.
Just because we've had a caller who's been holding for quite a bit. So let's see if we can take the caller quickly, and we're also going on wrap-up time. Caller, good evening. Hello?
Yes, good night. Good night. I've been listening to your panelists. Hello?
Yes, please go ahead. We're hearing you. Go ahead.
I am on. Yeah, yes, okay. I've been listening to your panelists. They effectively have focused on three things: the question of liberalization, the question of merger, the question of the direction and board composition. The one thing I have not heard about, which was mentioned in prior legislation, was the question of statutorization. That has not been addressed at all tonight. But of these three or four things, tell me which of them, maybe a panelist, maybe the doctor could tell me, which of them address the pressing problems of the two industries at this point. In other words, I made this point Friday in a meeting in St. David's. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. What are the problems facing the industry of nutmeg and the industry of cocoa, and how do these teams that I'm hearing about address them? There are issues to do with production. We're talking about being number 7 or 8 in the world. We're talking about declining production since Ivan. There are strategic issues which a combination of both in the past, both government and farmers have failed to address. The question of research, for example, the question of nutmeg wilt, that after 30 years we haven't addressed, right? The question of research generally, the question of male nutmeg, the extent of male nutmeg plants. So there are strategic and planning issues that have not been addressed in the past. There is a question of risk management. Look at what happened to us immediately after Ivan and our inability to have quickly addressed them, right? In this pandemic we're facing with, we now have a cash flow problem on the part of one of the associations having to borrow or obtain money elsewhere to be able to pay farmers. So there is a question of cash management. Tell me me which of the 4 themes that have been coming out on the discussion tonight and in the legislation address the pressing problems that these industries face. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, caller, for that. I see a pensive-looking Salim. Salim, I'm crossing to you because I could see your brain going like a windmill. Do you want to take that?
I think Dr. Fletcher would be best suited for that because he has the institutional memory. But Dr. Fletcher, would you like to take it?
If you pass it on to me, I would certainly, play it.
Well, let me just say, Dr. Fletcher, that we only have 5 minutes remaining, and we normally like to do a last round of 30-second comments, so we have to bear that in mind. Just a reminder.
Great. Just quickly, I think the caller really raised the fundamental issue. The question is, what is the objective of mergers? What is the objective of liberalization? None of these themes deal with the fundamental problems that the industry faces, which is production issues, value-added issues, governance issues, and performance, as I started to allude to earlier on. It does not address it. What we need is a focused, clinical, strategic focus on developing these associations to allow them to make a greater return to the benefit of this country, to improve the quality of lives of the farmers and the citizenry. All right, I will answer this in this short way.
Okay, so that was, according to my mother, that was the long and the short of it. Well said. So let's go to wrap-up comments because we only have 4 minutes remaining on the clock. And we are going to go first with Matthew Williams, our youth farmer. Salim, it's not that we're saying you're not youthful, huh?
That's okay.
Matthew? If I can just touch on that caller's question just a bit.
30 seconds, Matthew. 30 seconds is all you have.
Yeah, so there are actually a few things in the new legislation that would help with some of those problems, such as the board would have to do up a budget. The board would serve for a longer time, at least more than 1 year. And in closing, just briefly, I want to really sink in why this association is so important to us. And I want to put it into perspective. So the data points out that 40% of all nutmegs produced in Grenada turn out to be what we call light nutmegs, lowland nutmegs. These are undesirable, and so buyers don't like buying. Now, would you imagine what would happen if we privatize the industry? Could you imagine 40% of the nutmegs here, buyers don't want to buy it. So obviously, the private man would not want to buy it as well. So let's just imagine what happens to those farmers, 40% of the industry. So I'll close here since the time is short.
Thank you so much. Salim, your closing thoughts.
I would say added value, products with added value. You know, in the same way that Juve has been a success story, why can't we repeat that with the GCNA? And so that will help to stabilize because you're not only selling one commodity, but with regard to the monopoly, for GCNA to remain viable and GCA to remain viable, the monopolies have to be kept, but there's no reason why investments cannot be made in products of added value.
Great. Mr. Antoine, your closing thoughts?
Now, I must say this, in the Cocoa Association, we do what we call SWOT analysis. And we have projects that we want to put on stream. But you can't put everything on stream at the same time because you'll clog the stream. And I'll tell the St. David's people that we have a project that is coming to them soon, both for both cocoa and nutmeg, because since after Ivan, there have been low producers. The production hasn't risen to the level that it should. So what I'm telling people now, food is necessary for life. Farming is necessary to produce food. All food comes from the ground or the sea, the land or the sea. So if we stop farming, we starve. And if we starve, we die, and somebody comes and takes the land from us. But what I see, we're trying to get other people to take the land even while we're still alive. So we remain alive, we'll farm, and we'll do very well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Fletcher, the last word belongs to you, and you only have like 10 seconds.
Good. I think we should all step back from this process, from this breakneck speed that we are going at and trying to merge and liberalize the market. And we should follow some critical steps that I've outlined before in a document which will be published And let us bring everybody on board for the benefit of the farmers, for the benefit of the country. Let us form a grouping of stakeholders to consider this important issue and to solve the problems of the industry. Mergers will not solve it. Liberalization will not solve it. There are other things that we can do as association to improve the performance of those organizations, give a better return to Grenada, and to improve the quality of life of every citizen in this generation and generations to come.
Thank you so much, and we'd like to thank all of our panelists. I have a question that I'd like to have answered, and it has to do with the cocoa. Remember, when we were in school, they used to say, if your body hot, don't suck the cocoa. So, producer, I need to ask Mr. Antoine, is that a myth or is that true? Quickly, Mr. Antoine, if you suck cocoa while your body is hot, is something bad going to happen to you, Mr. Antoine?
What? I suck cocoa all the time. I still do.
But if your body hot, they say, when we as children, we used to be running up and down, and then we pick a cocoa in somebody's land, and they say something bad will happen.
That is just because they didn't want you to take cocoa. It's the same reason they give. They say, if you put on a cutlass and the blade is up, you're cutting God. That is just a reason to get you to do the right thing. Don't interfere with people's cocoa.
Okay, well, I used to be so scared, but I have one tonight, so at least I can. But what about eating it later, this hour of the night? Will I puff or something?
No. I do my anytime.
Okay, thank you so much. Bad manners to speak with food in your mouth, so my mother will not be pleased if she see me doing that. Let me thank everybody. Let me do the proper thing. Take the food from my mouth. Precious cocoa. Let me thank everybody for being great panelists this evening, and to all our viewers and listeners for staying with us. As we close tonight's program, we want to extend our deep condolences to the families who lost your loved ones today, and to those of you who are still worried because some of your relatives were transported to the hospital as a result of the accident. We pray God's grace, His peace, His strength, and His mercy upon this country and all of us as we seek to journey forward. That's Beyond the Headlines for tonight. I'm your host, Odette Campbell. So long for now.